All right, so have you guys checked your phones lately? Because today we're diving into a story that could reshape the apps you even see on it.
Oh, wow.
You could make one very popular app just vanish.
Oh, really? Which one?
TikTok.
TikTok, huh?
Yeah. The U.S. government is seriously thinking about a ban. And the Supreme Court is about to have its say.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a digital cliffhanger, huh?
Yeah, that's a big one. What's really interesting to me about this story is that it kind of goes way beyond just one app. You know, we're talking about like a clash of titans here. Free speech versus national security. And the outcome, I think it could really impact how governments around the world regulate what we see and do online.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack for sure.
It is.
So let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the U.S. government is concerned about TikTok.
Right.
Because it's owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance.
Right.
But what exactly are they worried about? Is it just about where the company is based?
Well, I mean, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
I think the heart of the matter is really data.
Oh.
You know, TikTok, it boasts over 170 million American users.
Wow.
That's a massive amount of information. Everything from birthdays and browsing history to potentially even location data. And the U.S. government is worried that the Chinese government could, force ByteDance to hand over all that user data.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. That is a bit unnerving.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that apps collect data.
Right.
But the idea of it ending up in the hands of another government is, it's a whole other level of concern.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's another layer to this too.
Right.
The algorithm.
Okay.
You know how TikTok seems to know exactly what videos will keep you scrolling?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. That's the algorithm at work, right?
Yeah.
It's a set of rules that determines what you see.
Yeah.
And the U.S. government fears that China might manipulate TikTok's algorithm to spread misinformation and influence, public opinion.
So it's not just about protecting data. It's about protecting what we see and believe, potentially.
Exactly.
That's a pretty powerful tool.
It is a powerful tool.
It's no wonder that this issue has garnered bipartisan support in Congress, right? It's not every day you see Democrats and Republicans agreeing so strongly on something this tech-focused.
Yeah, and that's what makes this case so significant. I mean, it's a rare instance where both sides of the aisle kind of see eye to eye on the potential threat, which adds even more weight to the government's push for a ban,
Okay, so let's say the Supreme Court, they side with the government and the ban goes into effect.
Right.
What would that actually look like for users like you and me?
Yeah.
Would TikTok just disappear overnight?
I mean, not exactly. It wouldn't be an instant digital vanishing act.
Okay.
For those who already have TikTok, you wouldn't suddenly lose access. But here's the catch. Companies like Apple and Google, they would be barred from offering TikTok in their U.S. app stores.
Okay.
No new downloads.
Gotcha.
No updates.
So the app would just slowly fade into obsolescence.
Pretty much.
That's a clever way to handle it, I guess.
Yeah.
But what about those companies, Apple and Google?
Right.
Would they face any consequences for, defying the ban?
Absolutely, yeah. The law packs a punch.
Okay.
With hefty penalties for violators, up to $5,000 per user.
Wow.
Imagine the astronomical fines Apple or Google would face if they didn't comply.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a powerful incentive to play by the rules.
For sure.
Wow, that's a serious financial risk. No wonder those companies are watching this case so closely.
Yeah.
But let's dive into the legal battle itself,
Okay.
ByteDance is claiming that the ban, infringes on their First Amendment right to free speech.
Right.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
So think of it this way. Is TikTok really that different from a newspaper or a website?
Yeah, I guess not.
ByteDance argues that the government shouldn't be able to dictate which platforms people use to communicate.
Okay.
After all, the First Amendment protects freedom of the press, right?
Right.
And prevents the government from censoring ideas.
Right. It's all about protecting the free flow of information.
Exactly.
But the U.S. government is kind of pushing back, right?
They are.
Arguing that they're not trying to control what TikTok says.
Right.
But rather who controls it and how that control could be used against American interests.
Right. So it raises a crucial question then. Is this a legitimate national security concern? Or is the government overstepping its boundaries? I mean, that's the crux of the debate, and it's a question the Supreme Court will ultimately have to answer.
It's a tricky situation, that's for sure. And it gets even more complicated when you consider that this whole concept of forcing a company to change ownership
right.
based on where it's headquartered is pretty unprecedented.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The U.S. has a history of restricting foreign ownership in certain sectors, like broadcast media, due to its potential to shape public opinion.
Right.
But social media is a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
Applying those same principles to platforms like TikTok, I mean, it opens up a Pandora's box of questions about how far the government can go in regulating the internet, you know?
It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if the U.S. can force ByteDance to sell TikTok,
right,
what's to stop them from taking similar action against other foreign-owned companies? Where does it end?
And that's the fear voiced by many critics of this ban, right?
Okay.
They argue that it sets a dangerous precedent,
right,
potentially leading to a fragmented internet where governments kind of cherry pick which companies and platforms are allowed to operate within their borders.
Right.
This could stifle innovation and hinder the free flow of information that the internet was built on.
It's a bit of a head-scratcher, for sure. And to add another layer of intrigue, ByteDance seems pretty determined to hold on to TikTok.
Yeah. They haven't shown any signs of giving into the pressure to sell.
Right.
At least not yet.
Their defiance adds another layer of complexity to this whole saga.
Yeah.
It's a high-stakes game of chicken, and it's unclear who will blink first.
Speaking of high stakes, you remember how former President Trump was a vocal advocate for banning TikTok?
Oh, yeah?
Another twist in this ongoing saga.
Right. So despite his initial stance, Trump has recently shifted gears. And now he wants to kind of put the brakes on the ban.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the new plan?
His new plan is to resolve the issue through negotiation once he's back in office.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder, what's his motivation for this sudden change of heart?
Yeah.
Some analysts believe that he might be eyeing TikTok as a bargaining chip in his dealings with China.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps he sees it as leverage in trade talks or other negotiations.
That's a plausible theory.
Right.
It wouldn't be the first time international relations have played out on the digital stage. This case highlights how deeply intertwined technology, politics, and global power dynamics have become.
So we've got a Supreme Court grappling with free speech versus national security, a former president with his own agenda, and the future of a global social media platform hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
It's like a real-life political thriller.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And the outcome of this saga could have profound implications, not just for TikTok and its users, but for the future of the internet as we know it.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
For sure.
We'll be back in a moment to explore the potential outcomes of the Supreme Court decision and what it could mean for you. Don't go anywhere.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. We've been kind of unpacking all this drama around a potential TikTok ban in the U.S.
Yeah.
And now we're like at the edge of our seats waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh in.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what could actually happen next. What are the the possible outcomes of this high stakes legal battle?
So the Supreme Court really has a few options on the table.
Okay.
I mean, they could side with ByteDance.
Okay.
Essentially tossing out the ban and giving TikTok the green light to operate freely in the U.S.
Okay.
Or they could uphold the ban.
Okay.
Potentially setting the stage for TikTok's exit from U.S. app stores.
So two very different paths with huge implications.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first scenario.
Right.
What happens if the Supreme Court decides in favor of ByteDance and strikes down the ban?
I mean, that would be a major victory for ByteDance.
Okay.
And a significant setback for the U.S. government's attempts to regulate foreign-owned tech companies. TikTok would be free to continue operating in the U.S. without the looming threat of a ban.
Yeah.
And users could breathe a sigh of relief, knowing their favorite app is safe.
Okay. But wouldn't that also kind of raise concerns about those initial security issues we talked about? Like the data privacy and the potential for foreign influence?
Absolutely. A ruling in favor of ByteDance would likely reignite the debate about, finding the right balance between national security and digital freedom.
Right.
I mean, critics would argue that it leaves the U.S. vulnerable to data misuse and foreign interference.
Yeah.
While supporters would hail it as a win for free speech and a check on government overreach, it would be a decision with ripple effects far beyond just one app.
Sounds like that outcome would create a lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, probably.
Now, let's imagine the opposite happens.
Okay.
The Supreme Court upholds the ban.
Right.
What would that mean for TikTok and its millions of users in the U.S.?
That would be a dramatic turning point, for sure.
Okay.
Essentially, it would force ByteDance to make a tough choice.
Okay.
Either sell TikTok to a U.S.-based company or watch it disappear from U.S. app stores.
Right.
Imagine millions of American users suddenly cut off from their favorite platform for sharing and consuming content.
Yeah, that would be a seismic shift in the social media world.
They would.
A lot of people, I mean, they rely on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Not just for entertainment, but also for their livelihoods.
Yeah.
What would happen to, like, the creators who depend on TikTok for income?
They would definitely feel the impact.
Yeah.
A lot of creators have built entire careers on TikTok.
Right.
And a ban would force them to scramble to find new platforms and rebuild their audiences.
Right.
There's a real risk of losing followers, income, and that hard-earned connection they've built with their fans.
It's almost like having the rug pulled out from under you.
Yeah, it would be tough.
And let's not forget, like, the cultural impact of TikTok.
Right.
It's become more than just an app.
It has.
It's like, you know, a cultural phenomenon.
For sure.
That's influencing trends, music, even political discourse.
Right.
Banning it would leave a noticeable void in the online world.
It's true. TikTok has woven itself into the fabric of our culture.
Yeah.
And its absence would be felt far beyond the realm of social media.
So we've got these two potential outcomes.
Yeah.
You know, the ban stands or it gets overturned.
Right.
But you mentioned earlier that there's a third possibility.
Uh-huh.
A more nuanced ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
What could that look like?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The court could choose a middle ground, perhaps requiring ByteDance to implement stricter data security measures.
Okay.
Or offer greater transparency into how TikTok's algorithm works.
Right.
They could even establish a framework for ongoing government oversight of the platform.
So it wouldn't be a complete victory for either side.
Right.
More like a compromise that tries to address the security concerns without completely shutting down the app.
Exactly. It would be an attempt to thread the needle, balancing the risks associated with TikTok's current ownership structure while allowing it to maintain a presence in the U.S.
Of course, even with a nuanced ruling like that, there would likely be a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth between ByteDance and the U.S. government as they try to iron out the details.
You're right. It wouldn't be a quick and easy resolution.
Right.
But it could lead to a more sustainable solution in the long run.
Okay.
One that addresses the core concerns without resorting to an outright ban.
So we've got the Supreme Court's decision looming. But we also have to factor in the wild card, you know?
Yeah.
Former President Trump's desire to handle this through negotiation.
Right.
How could his stance affect things?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the Supreme Court decides.
That's the big question mark hanging over this entire situation.
Yeah.
Trump's desire to negotiate with TikTok, especially after initially supporting a ban, adds another layer of unpredictability.
It seems like he's more interested in using TikTok as leverage in his dealings with China, possibly as a bargaining chip in trade talks or other diplomatic maneuvers.
That's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
His actions suggest that TikTok's fate might ultimately be decided, you know, not in a courtroom, but at the negotiating table where global power dynamics and economic interests often take center stage.
Imagine that, a social media app becoming a pawn in a high-stakes geopolitical chess match.
It's wild, right?
It's mind-boggling.
It highlights the complex and increasingly blurry lines between technology, politics, and international relations in our interconnected world.
Yeah.
What happens in the digital realm can have real-world consequences, and this case is a prime example of that.
So we got the Supreme Court weighing free speech versus national security, a former president with his own agenda,
right,
and of the fate of a global social media platform hanging in the balance.
That's a cliffhanger, for sure.
It's a real cliffhanger.
It is.
It's a situation that demands our attention.
It does.
The outcome of this saga could have far-reaching implications, not just for TikTok and its users,
right,
but for the future of online platforms and how we navigate the digital landscape in the years to come.
That's right.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
But this deep dive isn't over yet.
Yep.
In our final segment, we're going to zoom out and explore, like, the bigger picture.
Okay.
What does the TikTok saga tell us about the future of the internet? And what does it mean for you as a user? Stay tuned. Welcome back. We've been, like, totally dissecting this potential TikTok ban in the U.S.
Yeah.
A story that's got, like, everyone talking, right?
Right.
We've explored the security concerns, the legal battles, the political maneuvering.
Right.
But now, let's take a step back and, like, think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
What does this whole saga tell us about the future of the internet and how it's governed?
Well, what's fascinating to me about this case is how it exposes this, like, growing tension between the concept of national borders and the inherently global nature of the internet, you know?
Yeah.
Governments are really grappling with how to regulate these online platforms that operate across borders and connect people from all over the world.
It's almost like trying to put a fence around the ocean.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
The internet wasn't designed with national boundaries in mind.
Right.
It was meant to be a global space where information flows freely, connecting people and ideas, regardless of where they are.
Precisely. And that creates a real dilemma for governments that are used to operating within their own defined territories.
Right.
How do you regulate a platform like TikTok when its users, its data, and even its algorithms might be scattered all over the globe?
Right.
It challenges traditional notions of sovereignty and control.
It's a puzzle with no easy answers.
Yeah.
Especially as technology keeps advancing at such a rapid pace,
Right.
We're seeing the rise of artificial intelligence, the metaverse, and other innovations that further blur the lines between the physical and digital worlds.
And those advancements raise a whole new set of regulatory questions, like how do you ensure data privacy when information is, zipping across borders at lightning speed? How do you prevent the spread of harmful content when it can be accessed from virtually anywhere in the world?
Right.
I mean, these are challenges that will only become more complex as technology evolves.
It feels like we're entering uncharted territory when it comes to governing the internet.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The old rule book might not cut it anymore.
I think we need fresh perspectives, new frameworks, and maybe even new global institutions to effectively address the challenges of this, increasingly interconnected digital world.
This TikTok case could be like the wake-up call that sparks those conversations.
Yeah, it could be.
It's forcing us to confront the complex realities of regulating the internet in an age where national boundaries are becoming less relevant in the digital space.
It's a pivotal moment for governments, tech companies, and users alike.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking collaboratively about how to build a digital future that is both safe and free, where innovation can flourish while protecting individual rights.
And that brings us back to you, our listener.
Yeah.
If you were in charge, how would you balance these competing interests?
Right.
How would you ensure that the internet remains a force for good, connecting people, and fostering creativity, while also safeguarding against potential harms?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's a question with no easy answers, but it's a question we all need to be asking ourselves.
Right.
I think the future of the internet, and perhaps even the future of our societies, depends on finding solutions that work for everyone.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the TikTok ban. But as you can see, this conversation is far from over.
It's not, no.
Keep those questions in mind as you navigate this ever-evolving digital world.
For sure.
And remember, the best way to stay informed is to keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Couldn't agree more.